If your withdrawal rate is 18%, I'm telling you that's not sustainable. I don't care how much money you have. If you're pulling out 18% of your unless you get lucky and you're some crazy stock that just goes up forever, which I've never seen one do that.
Same.
That's not sustainable.
Welcome to Upticks with Jake Falcon, founder and CEO of Falcon Wealth Advisors. In this podcast, we help high net worth individuals overcome financial complexities. We do this by enhancing financial literacy and discussing topics in a language free from industry jargon. Now, on to the show.
Welcome back to Upticks with Jake and Cory. Cory, welcome back to the show.
Jake, thank you for having me.
Cory, before we came on air here, you were drinking a Red Bull. Have you always been a Red Bull guy?
No, it kind of rotates. I've always been a caffeine guy. That's the truth. It's just a matter of the consumption.
And
Today
it's
it's Red Bull. Sugar-free. Sugar-free.
Do you still drink Red Bull vodka?
No.
Yeah,
Actually, that's not true. I had one not that long ago at a concert.
Wow. Were you tired? And that's why you got it?
I was. Yeah, it's a Friday night. My brother was in town. I was trying to make sure we had a good time. Anyway.
All right. Well, for today's topic, before we dive into it, thank you, Cory. We're recording back to back because as of this being distributed to the public, I will be in New York City recording my audiobook, Cory.
Retiring right?
Yeah, I got a copy right here. Hold on. Super excited. So again, Retiring Right, Smart Steps for Exiting Corporate America was released in May of 2024. I've got this hardback, paperback, and a digital copy. And I'm going to New York, Cory. 2 days, I'll be recording an audio version that'll be available, I don't know, Amazon, Audible. We'll figure that out. I don't know where it'll be available.
Yeah, more to come.
More to come. But for the listeners, if you want your free copy of Retiring Right, I'm happy to send you the ebook version. All you have to do is two things. One, you've got to follow me or Cory on Instagram. And my name on Instagram is Jake_Falcon_CRPC. And Cory's is Cory Bittner KC. Follow us and send us a private message with the letters RR for Retiring Right. And he or I will happily send you your free ebook version, 150 action-packed pages on retirement planning. So I'm excited, Cory. I'll be in New York doing some other fun stuff, some shopping. We're going to go see a play, Denzel Washington on Broadway, eat some good food. So yeah, more to come on that. I'll share some recap. But again, I got to travel.
Let's talk about this real quick. Before this trip though. So this will be the first time, Jake, that you've recorded an audiobook, right? So what are you thinking about before you go and do that? Have you thought about like how you're going to try to do that? Are you trying to warm up your vocal cords or doing any exercises? I'm just curious.
No, I'm a planner. I am nervous. However, I have a director and she basically practiced with me for 30 minutes. So what I did is before we had a call, I recorded myself reading my book and sent it to her. Not the whole thing. Like I think the introduction.
To get some feedback. Okay, good.
And she's awesome, by the way. She coached me over this 30 minutes. And we have 3 hours of record time for every 1 hour of book time reserved.
Wow.
And she calls it, I think, a punch. So basically, I'll read something and she's going to punch it and replay what I just read, and then I'll start reading again. So she's editing in real time while
Pretty
I'm
slick.
reading. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So she's the editor and the director, 2 for 1. So I have a lot of confidence in her ability. Not so much in mine because I don't do this, but
Sure.
But I think she's gonna make me sound good.
Good.
And I'm pretty lucky. I mean, I'll bring my essential water, but like I have a pretty strong voice. I'm not really worried about that.
Yeah, I can't recall many issues with your vocal nature, Jake.
Yeah.
Not being able to hear you, or you not being able to speak clearly.
Yeah, I think I'll be
good.
fine.
Well, make sure you post some photos or share some videos when you're doing that. We'd love to see it.
Yeah, that's my plan. That's my plan is to share some videos and pictures
Cool.
of New York, especially the studio. So I'll be doing that. I'm real excited. Rachel is taking an art business class at Sotheby's. So we'll be there a week. So I'm real excited for her. She's going to go learn a lot more about valuing art, collecting art. So it's pretty cool. So I'm excited for her too. That's going to scratch an
More
itch.
travel. That's great.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to, but my hope is, Cory, this is a work trip. Okay. So I'm hopeful that because it's a work trip, I won't the travel and we have a direct flight. Direct
Makes a difference.
flight, nice hotel, work trip. Stay tuned. I'm probably still going to hate travel after this, but we'll see what happens.
Maybe you'll
I,
change your
I,
tune.
I don't want to, yeah, I don't want to make any assumptions. I'm going to go into it with an open mind. All right, let's play some ball here, Cory. Let's get into today's topic, and I'm going to let you lead off since you are my guest. Today's topic is, can you retire with $1 million?
Yes.
No. Full disclosure, Cory's not saying yes.
Not
He's not
financial
saying it.
advice. Can you? Yes.
Ah.
Should you? Maybe. It all
Ah.
depends.
Good
It
one.
all depends on your plan and your situation and your circumstances. We've, Jake, both worked with clients that have retired with a lot more money and a lot less money than $1 million.
You're right, Cory. And so when you see a headline, and I don't care who it is, Wall Street Journal, Barron's, Kansas City
CNBC,
Star, what's that?
CNBC, lots of
CNBC,
them out there.
whatever. You see a headline that says you need $1.4 million to retire. It's BS.
Based on what?
Exactly. So, Cory, I like your point. Yes, you can, but does that mean your retirement will be a successful one financially is the true question. So
Exactly.
the key here, the key point to remember, and I want to talk about with you, Cory, is cash flow. So let's go over an example. I'll go over an example where having $1 million is plenty.
Good.
If you are 70 years old and you retire, or 60 years old, it doesn't matter,
Sure.
and you're married, and you and your spouse have both maxed out Social Security, so you're going to get the max benefit from Social Security. Let's say you're both going to get $3,000 each. Let's say you're 70.
Okay.
And you're both going to get, and you retire. You're both retired at the same time, and you're both going to get $3,000 each from Social Security. So there's $6,000. And let's say you happen to work at a company that has a pension that's going to pay you another $3,000. So between you and your spouse, you're going to get $9,000 a month in income for your lifetime, as long as Social Security's around and as long as your pension can pay you. There's no guarantee with either of those. And let's say, Cory, you only need $10,000 a month to sustain your lifestyle. Well, then if you've got $1 million and you're pulling $1,000 a month off of that, again, there's no guarantee with anything, but there's a good chance that we're going to be able to invest, or anybody, an advisor or yourself, are going to be able to invest that to help generate that return. But again, there's no guarantee with that either.
That's good.
And that circumstance, $1 million, you're probably going to have a good chance of being able to retire and live comfortably the rest of your life. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's exactly right, Jake. I think the key, though, to all of this is that you've got to be honest with yourself about what's important to you, about what you really need, and what you're willing to sacrifice. Because I think that when the paychecks go away, almost regardless of how much money someone has, if it's $1 million or $10 million or 100,000, somewhere in between, regardless of what that number is, you've got to be honest with yourself about what it is that's important to you and what you want to spend your money on and what it is that you really need to live comfortably. Because without that, that's setting yourself up for a lot of unnecessary stress and discomfort in retirement. And you're much better off working a little bit longer, maybe than you even wanted to, and making sure that you're on more solid financial footing than jumping ship maybe a little earlier than you should, or if it's going to be real tight, and then just assuming that everything's going to work out the way that it should.
Right. And a full disclosure here, by the way, and everyone should already know this, but this show is not advice.
Yes.
If you really want to know if $1 million will cut it for you and your family, you got to meet with us or meet with a fiduciary wealth advisor that can crunch those numbers.
Yes.
But let me give you an example of where it won't work. I'll give you another example. So let's say you're 55 and you've got $1 million, and maybe you'll get Social Security at 62 or age 70 whenever you turn it on. But let's say you need to spend $15,000 a month to sustain your lifestyle. Maybe you've got 2 homes with mortgages. Maybe you've got a boat. Maybe you've got car payments. Maybe you've got credit card debt, right? You got bills you have to pay. You can't cut them. Like, you owe these things.
Yes.
I guess you could sell a home or whatever, but you have these bills and you're not willing to cut anything. Well, if we just do some quick math, Cory, if you need $15,000 a month and you're 55 and you're not going to get Social Security anytime soon, that's $180,000 a year, which is 18% of $1 million. Am I doing that right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think I am. And that is not sustainable. I mean, the pundits or whatever, the general rules out there say
Mm.
4%, which we don't subscribe to that either. But a lot of people out there will say 4% is a withdrawal rate. If your withdrawal rate is 18%, I'm telling you that's not sustainable. I don't care how much money you have. If you're pulling out 18% of your, unless you get lucky and you're some crazy stock that just goes up forever, which I've never seen one do that.
Same.
That's not sustainable. So again, there's a lot more nuance and planning and work, and you got to figure out your asset allocation and your investments and your risk tolerance and risk capacity, things we've talked about. So again, it all depends. Like you said, it just depends how old you are, how much you're going to spend, and what your other income sources are.
Yes. Yep.
You know, if you've got $1 million and you tell me you can live off 2 or 3 grand a month, it probably will work. There's no guarantee, but you have a better chance than 18,000 a month or 15,000 a month.
Yep. Yeah, and I think another point along that though, because Jake, you just sort of painted that scenario, talked about somebody retiring at 55, 15 grand a month, regardless of what that number is, that's also 10 years before someone's eligible for Medicare. So
Right.
recognizing that where you pull money from, particularly if it's treated as taxable income, can directly influence how cheap or expensive your healthcare is. And if somebody has 1 or 2 years to bridge before Medicare, as opposed to 10, that can make a difference. That can actually make a huge difference.
Right. I don't have the numbers in front of me, Corey, and I'm a little bit older than you, but like when I was a young boy, $1 million was a lot of money
Yes.
in the 80s and the early 90s. A millionaire was like, whoa,
Right.
you're a millionaire? Like,
You made
I
it.
would argue in the town I grew up in, I bet there wasn't that many millionaires in the whole town.
Mhm.
And there was 15,000 people. I bet I don't know because I was a kid, but like now, and I don't want to discount this. If you're a millionaire, if you have $1 million and you're watching this, congratulations, by the way, because it's not easy to save $1 million still.
Nope, it's not.
It's a lot of discipline to do that. So, but the reality is $1 million just doesn't buy what it used to buy. And that's called inflation. And, in the 80s and 90s, a car, a home, all that stuff was a lot cheaper. Stamp, it was all a lot. Eggs, don't get me started on
Everything.
eggs. Everything was a lot cheaper. And so the key here is you can't just get to some arbitrary number without knowing what your financial plan is. Because everybody's needs are different. If you're single versus married, that's a dramatically different financial plan. It
That's
just
true.
is. It just is. Your spending is going to be, one car instead of 2 cars. Your utility bills are cheaper. Like your food bills are cheaper. I mean, it's not in half, but it's different. So single versus married versus other goals. Do you have travel goals? Do you have multiple properties? What's going on? And like you said, Corey, I've had clients retire with less than $1 million and they're doing great.
Correct.
They don't spend that much money, or they have a pension that's paying them.
Yes. Yeah. You know what is really fascinating about this, though, Jake, is we talked last week about the go and the slow go and the no go years as far as retirement goes. What we're talking about here today can be so closely aligned with that and sort of mapping out what that spending actually looks like. But also, I don't want to just keep repeating myself, but being honest with yourself about what it is that you really want and what you need, because we are a consumer economy and we do need people to consume for things to continue to expand. But endless consumption without any guardrails in place or without any, restrictions or constraints that you even set for yourself. Like my wife and I are getting ready to redo our kitchen. And I'm like, we could just spend endless money on this house. Just like you and Rachel have done some stuff with your house, right? You could just continue to dump dollar after dollar after dollar into it. But you reach a point where you have to decide what's important to you.
Right.
And I think deciding what's important to you is probably one of the biggest factors of how much money that you need to retire. And like, of course, you've got to get the financial piece aligned, but you've got to figure out what's important to you. And if just not working anymore is the most important thing, that might not be enough for a successful retirement. Like you got to think about what the purpose is going to be. You made a point to me, Jake, that, your belief, and I don't want to speak for you, but your belief is that, humans need purpose. It's more about purpose than it is necessarily a job specifically or work specifically. And that's important, especially if you're not working anymore.
Right. Because it's easy to default to your purpose being your job.
Of course.
And it's easy to default that because you're providing for your family. And if your family's your purpose, Therefore, your job is your purpose. And there's nothing
Yep.
wrong with that, by the way. However, when that job goes away, or if you don't like your job, you've got to find a renewed purpose. But
And
again,
it's probably not to just consume.
right. And retirement shouldn't be so cookie cutter. Now, what's interesting is to say that $1 million is enough, but we can tell you how much you need. I do that all the time.
Yep.
I'll tell new clients or clients like I was meeting with a client the other day, and they've got a great financial plan, but we were showing them spending like 150,000 a year versus 180,000 a year and
Mm.
retiring at different points.
Okay.
And it was $1 million difference.
I believe it.
So for this particular client, they needed about $1 million more to be able to spend more, and that equated to working some more years and saving more. So we told them, I was in there with Jake Cross, our head of financial planning, and I was like, we're like, you could do it. This is what you need to do. And so it's going to come down to how long do you want to work?
How did
And
they
how
feel
much
about that?
they loved it. I think that, of course, I'm going to say that. I think they
Sure.
I felt like there was a lot of understanding. Like they were writing it down
Good.
because I was giving them numbers. Like you need X amount of dollars for this goal to work, and you need Y amount of dollars for this goal to work. And our plan is suggesting you need to work this amount of years for this one, and this amount of years for this one. And I told them, it doesn't matter to us. I was like, you just got to tell us what you want to do. If you want to spend more, then you're gonna have to work a little longer and save a little bit more. If this is enough, this is when you can retire. But my job is not to talk somebody into anything.
Yes.
My job is also not to parent a client, right? Like they're the adult, they're the client. They tell us what they want. We'll tell them exactly how we feel they can best accomplish that. And then we monitor and maintain the plan along the way
Yep.
as their life adjusts. So I think it was a good check-in with the client. They're younger, so they've got some time. But we wanted to know, they wanted to know what they needed to do for that to happen. And I was able to tell them
Really
that. So
good.
that's the beauty of financial planning. That's real planning. That's advanced planning when it works its best. Like, but my point is you can't get that from this show alone. And
Correct.
you can't get that from the New York Times. You can't get that from the Kansas City Star. You have to meet with somebody who is dedicated, and it's their profession and their purpose to help advise you on this.
Yep.
And we can do it. And we do it all the time. And again, there's no guarantees, but we do this and we meet with clients and we go over it. But just to think, oh, I need $1 million without any real planning is very reckless.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm glad you said that because that's, I think, is a big point here. And just recognizing that fact that there's more to it. And I think it's to the example that you gave, Jake, and the couple that you guys were talking to, they have a choice right after that meeting to say, all right, I heard everything that Jake and Jake told me, but I really think we're going to be okay. So let's retire. You can do that. That is a choice. But if things don't go the way that you want them to, and I'd recognize and look back on, okay, what could we do differently? Where can we adjust along the way? Because I do think that's a big part of this is that you would much rather know that before you retire. Because I've worked with and have seen clients that have the stress of the job, whatever it might be, whatever they were doing, just like getting out from under that was the most important thing.
Right.
But if they did that a year or two earlier than their plan allowed for as much comfort for, it's easy to convince yourself that not doing this anymore is like the most important thing to me. But when you're on the other side of that and you don't have the job and the stress anymore, but it's like, all right, well, I can't exactly do everything I wanted to because I retired a little bit earlier than I planned to. That's the point where you can say, all right, well, I'm just going to go do everything I wanted to go do anyway and see how it works out, which I wouldn't advise.
Right.
But that's also the point to say, like, maybe if I make an adjustment for a year or two, that can make all the difference for the rest of my retirement.
It's that powerful. And to go on about this a little bit, like you could have $10 million and it not be enough.
Correct. That's
and
right.
You could have 500,000 and it'd be enough. It all comes down to that spending and that cash flow. And I've talked about this on this show before to bring back the stock market. And if you're worried about losing money in the market and running out of money, the best thing you can do, in my opinion, is to stop spending money.
Yeah, that's right.
Which people don't want to hear.
Not very appealing. No, not very appealing.
But if you
I don't
want
like
to
that
retire
one,
with
Jake.
$1 million, we can tell you how much $1 million will spit off. And then if you want to retire and have $1 million, we'll tell you, well, you've got to live off of X amount a month.
Right.
Can you do that? Are you willing to do that? Are you able to do that? What do you have to sacrifice to do that?
That's right. Yeah, the world changes and the markets change and they ebb and they flow. And I do think that we have, and maybe it's just the way that we've all been conditioned, ourselves over the last several decades, is that there is a feeling, I think, or there's a belief that, when somebody transitions into retirement, that things change, but like the world keeps going, the markets are going to ebb and flow, things are going to change, things are going to pop up that you didn't expect. That will happen the same way in retirement that it does while you're working.
Right.
But if we're too rigid, we talked a while ago on the show, Jake, like the number one mistake that we see people make is their inability to change their behavior or their thinking, or to just say like, this is the way I want it to be, so therefore that's the way it should be, instead of acknowledging, well, here's the way that things actually are.
Brian, and that's life. You can't have your cake and eat it too. That's not the way the world works.
That's right.
And again, it's nobody's fault. I think we're brought up in
Correct.
a society that think we can have it all.
Yes.
You can have it all, and with no regard to accountability or sacrifice or
Yeah.
discipline. And so, again, we don't want to be we're just going to crunch the numbers, say, hey, based on how much you have and what you want to spend and what our investment allocation suggests, this is what it looks like.
That's right.
And our clients are our bosses. We hear that
Yes.
loud and clear. But I can't wave a magic wand and say, all right, boss, everything's going to be all right. You spend whatever you
Problem
want.
solved. Yep.
We'll make it work. Like, that's not how this works. So it's about having a clear communication back and forth with your advisor, understanding what they're suggesting and saying to you so that it makes sense. And then, like you said, controlling your behavior.
Yep.
And that's
Because
what's
it's easy
great.
to hear what we want to hear. It is.
Yes. Yeah, oh, yeah. And that's why, again, that's what you and I are up against, that challenge every day, because of the media or the commercials and all the things that are out there promising and claiming things. They're either scaring the heck out of people or promising
Yep.
them things that aren't actually realistic. And that's the greed side. So fear
Yep.
and greed, those triggering emotions, are what we hope to balance for clients and not let them get too imbalanced either direction.
Yes.
So
And we shouldn't, and I don't discount this, and I know that you don't either, Jake, but to just make this point too, like you've done this for 19 years. I have for 15. We've worked together every day for 15 years, and we've met with hundreds, with thousands of people, and have a lot of experience in seeing what people have done well and what they wish they could do differently. And I think just being able to see things through that lens, I'm not retired myself, right, Jake, and neither are you, but we have worked with people to and through retirement, and we've seen what people, and I've had honest conversations with people about what they could do differently if they went back, what they feel like they really did well. And bringing that experience and perspective to the conversation, I think, is what we're trying to do on the show, and what we like to do when we meet with clients on a one-on-one basis, or when we meet with prospective clients about what can my retirement look like. We shouldn't discount the value of people that have done this before and learning from the wisdom that they have to share.
right. And some of the biggest mistakes we've seen, Cory, are people not being honest with themselves
Correct.
or not being honest with us.
Right.
And so, again, it is certainly possible to retire off $1 million. We don't know if your financial plan's going to work until we build the plan.
Yep.
But again, it all comes down to cash flow. Cash flow is so important in retirement, and I can't talk about it enough. Dividends, bond interest, Social Security, pension, part-time work, all that stuff is such a big deal. It's a game changer. If you could go get a
Yep.
job making $2,000 a month, and you work for 10 more years, that can drastically change a financial plan.
Yes.
Drastically.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So there's a lot of things that you can do out there. The key here is to meet with your financial planner. Be honest with yourself. Be honest with them. If you have questions, ask them. And let's review that plan regularly, because
Yes.
inevitably, like you talked about, Cory, your life is going to change. And we
Yep.
understand that. And you know what? When your life changes, we change the plan. And that's why I don't
Exactly.
call a financial plan a roadmap. Maps aren't supposed to change.
That's right. Static.
Financial plans do change, and that's okay too. And we'll
Yep.
change them, and we'll roll with it.
Excellent.
Good. Good.
right.
Let's go. I didn't know if I brought this up. Did I bring this up? We have another listener suggestion. Let's go into that.
All right, let's do it. So I'll read this one off, Jake. So thank you to the listener or the viewer that sent this message in. But Jake, the message here was, thought of a topic that could be a good conversation for the show. What is the most materialistic or consumer item that, Jake, that you and I have bought that's brought us the most joy? An item that is definitely not needed, but makes you feel those warm and fuzzies every time you use it or look at it. Also, the worst purchase, something you saved for and bought that lost its appeal after you got it.
Man, this is a good question, and I
Great
appreciate the
question.
person sitting in. And by the way, if you're watching or listening to Upticks and you've got a question,
Yes.
email Luke at falconwealthadvisors.com or a topic, and Cory and I are happy to discuss it live here on Upticks. I don't know, Cory. Like, here's my deal. This is going to sound so conflicted, but to me, it's not. I feel
Okay.
aligned. I enjoy nice things, and I have nice things. However, those nice things don't necessarily bring me joy.
Mm. There
So
has to be something that does. Those mirrors. I don't know. You choose.
I'd say my Rolex watch.
Mm.
Since I was a kid, I wanted a Rolex. Had a fake Rolex. Didn't really wear the fake Rolex, but I had one.
Do you still have it?
I don't know. I have no idea.
I'd love to know if you do. Okay.
But I've got a cool Rolex. Not a super expensive one, but it's rare, and I like it. It's green. It's the Hulk for those that are watch aficionados. It's already appreciated in value, so I could sell this sucker if I wanted to make some money. But I wouldn't say it gives me joy, but I like wearing it. Like, I'll tell you this, I went on vacation and I didn't bring it, and I brought a different watch, and I missed the Rolex. So what about you? You got one?
Mine would be my car.
Okay, but you're leasing the car. You didn't buy your car.
That's right.
I guess
leased
you're spending money. You're spending money, though.
I'm spending money on it, no doubt. But I had the opportunity to basically build what Jake has been my dream car for a long time. And it is, I've joked, I've told a lot of people this, that I'm like, I know deep down that I don't feel like a material item should bring me as much joy as it does. But when I get in that car, turn it on or drive, it's like, yeah, the smile creeps across my face and I feel good about it. But you know what? That's the key there, is that I do feel good about that. I don't feel bad about it. I don't feel bad about spending money on that I don't have because I've planned for it.
Exactly. And tell real quick though, You're right. You should not feel guilt because you're successful, and you should not feel guilt as long as it's in your financial plan and you can afford it. It shouldn't matter. But tell the audience what you drive. Don't you drive an airplane? What do you drive?
Not an airplane, not a flying car either, but it's a 2025 BMW X5 M60.
That's a nice looking car.
It's SUV, but it's got a big fast engine in it, and I love it. I do.
What about the other side of this question, the buyer's remorse piece? Have you ever bought anything that you've regretted?
I'm grateful that I don't think there's been anything really big, like my home, my vehicle. Those are not regrets that I have. I think money that I've spent on material items, like literally even like electronics, I think I've probably bought new iPhones more than I needed to, or new computers or whatever it might be, thinking that the latest and greatest is going to be best, and then it all just changes again. But that's actually the best example I could come up with, because I'm grateful that at this point in life, I feel pretty aligned around what I do and don't want to spend money on, and what's important to me and what's not. But it's taken me a long time to get there.
Good. I don't really have much either. I have a really nice suit. We're suit guys that I bought. I wanted to support a local clothier, and he custom made it for me. And it's just not very good. It was very expensive. So I wouldn't say I have buyer's remorse, but the way I look at it, I could have spent that money on I normally like Xenia suits. I could have bought me a Xenia suit for probably the same price and gotten a much better suit than this guy claimed. Like, he oversold it.
Yeah. And I
didn't appreciate that.
Yeah, that's fair. That's good. It's good awareness, because I think I know the person that asked this question on a pretty personal level, and know where it's coming from, because we've had some great conversations around so this is, without revealing anything, a parent with a young family, and who has expressed to me just guilt around spending money on themselves. Right. When you've got a wife, you've got kids, this and that. And we've talked about how, like, if you can get your saving and your financial plan aligned, you can then spend money more freely without the guilt, because you know you're already taking care of what you need to. But an interesting part of the question that he asks is something you saved for and bought that lost its appeal. That's a smart question, because I have learned, Jake, that if I'm saving for something to buy it, I think a whole lot more about than just like an impulse purchase. There's a lot more opportunity for regret with an impulse purchase, that if I actually force the discipline of saving to buy something, before I pull the trigger, I really ask myself, is this how I want to spend the money?
Good point. That's good. You're right. I don't have exactly. I think saving is the best way to avoid
or if you really need
dampen that regret. And I got a quick tip for this person.
Yeah, great.
because that guilt, because I have the same issue. Like I buy myself some nice stuff and I got to make sure that Rachel's taken care of. But when you're talking about a financial plan and a monthly budget, you just need to make sure that you're saving in all the appropriate buckets and that you're paying all of your bills and that you're taking care of all the necessities with food and clothing and all those things. You should know what all that is. And then your excess, whatever that, hopefully there's an excess,
Right.
whatever that excess is, that's the guilt-free money. So whether it's $50 a month or $5,000 a month, whatever that excess is, that's money you should just whatever.
Yeah, or have a dialogue with your family about how you want to spend that money.
Yeah, hey, we got 10 grand excess this quarter.
Daddy's
don't
getting a
need it.
Rolex. I'm just kidding. But
Get a Rolex.
But maybe no guilt, right? As long as those boxes
I
are
didn't have any
checked.
guilt. I didn't
No
have any guilt. But you know what I did do?
What?
I ended up, I don't know when, I ended up buying Rachel a Rolex. Not at the same time. I
Now
had the
there's no
money.
guilt.
I had the money though, right? My financial plan. It's all about having your plan in good order first. I had the money. I could easily afford it. It was her birthday. I said, boom, I got one. I love this watch. You want a nice watch? Let's go get you a nice watch. And that was a little bit of an impulse purchase. However, I had the money. I knew I had the money and I knew my plan was in good order to be able to afford it. So that's why I did it. If I didn't know I had the money, I wouldn't have done it. But I knew I had the money saved.
And to my wife, Cassie, if you're watching the show, I don't know if we have the money for the Rolex or not.
That's right.
I'm just
Well,
kidding.
you need to crunch the numbers more then.
That's right. And to your point though, Jake, I wear an Apple Watch, right? And I love it. And that's good. And that works. But like we spend money on different things and that's okay. I love that you have the Rolex that you love. I've got an Apple Watch. I can talk to Siri while I hold the baby in one hand and send a text message, right? Works great.
Right.
But there's no guilt either way.
No, there's not. And there shouldn't be. There shouldn't be. Good show, Cory. Anything else as we wrap up?
I don't think so. Thank you, Jake.
Thank you, Cory. And thank you all for tuning in. As always, we hope you have a great week.
Thank you for listening to Upticks. Click the subscribe button to be notified when new episodes become available. Also, be sure to visit our website, falconwealthadvisors.com, and click the Contact Us button if you'd like to meet with Jake and his team.